Hello, Bill.
Good morning, Matt.
Welcome to the DMZ, everybody.
Wednesday morning. This will be day 2 of the impeachment trial. I don't know if it started yet or not.
No, noon. I think noon today.
Okay.
They keep weird hours. Maybe they're doing Joe Biden's agenda this morning. I don't know.
It's like when they pass $1 trillion legislation, that's usually at 2:00 in the morning. But when you're in an impeachment trial, you gotta get your beauty rest for your impeachment trial.
Yeah, come on. They stumble in at noon? That's ridiculous. I say 10 o'clock start time.
Now, I have to make a comment here, Matt. I feel like you have tweaked your backdrop.
I have. Bill, are you familiar with the Twitter feed Room Raider?
Well, I was going to say, were you displeased with your 6 out of 10 from Room Raider?
Yes.
And that prompted you to change your angles.
Yeah. So first of all, it's weird. I'm used to going on TV to a professional TV set, a studio. And then all of a sudden COVID happened and we started doing things from home. But, it was sort of Zoom and it didn't matter that much. But now it's like you have to look as good as you can. And when I'm on TV, there might be 3 or 4 guests. So I'm juxtaposed against people in a real studio, right? They've got professional lighting. They've got professional cameras. And it's hard to compete. And so I got I say I was chastened by Room Raider. So I very quickly now I'm trying to I've been instructed by Room Raider that I need to do some more fixes, that my lighting is still not quite there, that I need a fern. I don't know if you can, and here's the other thing. It's like, depending on what you're watching, you may not be able to even see that I need a fern, right? Like, so on blogging heads, we're in these little boxes. So you might have a tighter look at me, the backdrop. But anyway, it's just a long way of saying that I needed to up my game, and it's a work in progress.
We need more books. You got too much empty space on the bookshelves.
Do I? See, that's the thing. I have plenty of books, trust me. But I felt like the Globe. Can you see the Globe?
I mean, Globe is good, and I think the Andy Griffith picture is good, but everything should be full beyond that.
I don't see. I would love if the commenters would let us would chime in, because I'm not convinced that's true. I've got 1 million books, so that's not a problem. It's not a demand. It's not a supply problem. I've got, but I question that. I think that people want to see. They don't want to see just they don't want to see just horizontal books. They want to see like some stacks of vertical books. They want to see some empty space. They want to see some, the souvenirs and stuff.
Well, I do think it at least looks like this is a bookshelf that you actually use for books that you read, not for show. I don't know if you saw that article in Politico several months back about there's this whole business of giving you your decorative books, the people who warehouse of used books, they organize like, here's a red shelf and here's a green shelf. And
you can obviously have the fake background like on Zoom, which we've played around with at Christmas time, or you can actually order fake back. It's a real backdrop, but it's a fake backdrop. Right. But these are real, and these are all books. I mean, I could go through. And these are books, real books that I've, in some cases read. In some cases, I've even interviewed people. We've got some Churchill back here. I've got the Joe Scarborough book up there. I don't know if you could see it.
Yeah.
The Rod Dreher book. So these are legit books that I personally own. And I've got a lot more in my living room. I've got probably 3 to 4 times as many books in a bookshelf down there. So,
well, I'm sorry I can't be in front of my own bookshelf right now, but I'm trying to. School is a few feet away, so I need to be in as far away from which is not all that far away, but it's relatively far away from where school is happening.
It's so tough. There was some doctor, or it was a lawyer the other day, who went on Zoom.
Yeah.
And his kids had made him, he looked like a bunny or something.
Yeah.
A cat, I'm sorry. Bill, when our children did the DMZ Junior, the last taping, when I returned to my computer, my son had done some effect where it made me look like I had a mustache. No matter what I did, I could move around and the mustache followed me.
Right.
And I had to figure out how to turn it off. And if it had been an emergency, if I was called to go on TV or something via Zoom, I would have been up a creek without a paddle. This is a real problem.
Although now if you got caught with a mustache, you're like, oh, at least you're not a cat. It wouldn't be a big deal at all anymore.
But now people would start to think that I'm it's a shtick, that I did it on purpose to get attention. And Bill, I would not stoop to that level.
Of course not.
To get buzz or attention or internet fame. Come on, you know me better than that.
Anyway, let's get down to business. So, you actually sat through impeachment yesterday, which I have to say I did not, and that was partly because I couldn't, because we had a snow day, not even a remote school snow day, kids not in school snow day, and so I was doing a lot of parenting and refereeing and food preparing and
did your kids do anything and like sled riding or building fort outside?
No. Okay. I took one kid sledding last week, and she went down a big hill once, and she hurt her arm, and she's still sore. And my other one has expressed zero interest in actually experiencing the outdoors during this time. So
your snow day is just a day when you're tormented by children.
Since my earbuds are in, yes, that is absolutely 100% correct. And so I couldn't, sit and watch the news. I did have a little bit in my ear while I shoveled snow, and I heard one of the Trump lawyers do some very long explanation about, ands and shalls, and whether Trump is, if he could be impeached if he's not currently president. And I was like, I'm so bored out of my mind. I'm just so done with this. I'm so personally done with all this nonsense. I have no interest in reliving it whatsoever. I hold things accountable. I'm not saying you should have the impeachment, but don't make me a part of it is my attitude.
Well, it does take attention, though. I mean, because as long as I was alone yesterday, my kids were mercifully, they were in school. As long as I was alone yesterday, I was able to follow it. But when I picked my kids up from school, and I was trying to listen to it on the radio, and my kids were sort of in the background. You have to listen closely because I'm not a lawyer, and this is you have to follow it closely to pick up on the arguments and some of the subtleties, and so it's tough to do with you're shoveling snow and then listening to it and kids talking to you in the other ear. I don't think that the dads of the world get enough props for what we go through.
We have the hardest burden, as everybody knows. All the injustices of the world are on the dads.
Yeah,
that's an irrefutable statement, I'm sure.
Underrated heroes. I'll say it.
Okay. But you stomached it, and I mean I heard that even the Senate Republicans were appalled by the Trump presentation, although only Bill Cassidy flipped his vote because of it. Was that your immediate reaction to this is an embarrassment, or was that a little overwrought because these folks are up close and the average person isn't up close?
Well, so the Democrats started off with this very powerful and emotional video, juxtaposing Trump's speech, the rally, with scenes of the insurrection. Then the Democrats had two very effective House impeachment managers who really kind of made the legal case, citing precedent, citing legal scholars, in some cases conservative legal scholars, and really preempting what the defense, so the prosecution did a good job of preempting what the defense was about to say, or the defense. as they say. Maybe I'm watching too much football. The defense was about to say, and the Trump. So the defense had two attorneys. The first is this former Pennsylvania district attorney who apparently decided not to go after Bill Cosby. That's sort of his claim to fame. And he was way out of his league. At one point, he even admitted that he was sort of riffing because what he had prepared, the prosecution had surprised him by preempting some of his stuff. So he sort of copped to the fact that this was just like this, free for all. And a lot of people he reminded me, I'm sure you've seen My Cousin Vinny, the public defender, that they brought in.
Right.
He was not good. It was very bad. The other attorney, is it Schoen? I don't know.
I don't know.
He was more in the Trump mode of being a fighter, I would say, and really just trying to make the argument that this is all a moot point because it's unconstitutional. You can't impeach a president who is not a president. He's a private citizen, and so it's all a moot point. And that's basically what it was. I would say that the prosecution really outclassed the defense. And it's probably not a surprise, right? Donald Trump was not able to retain the top lawyers. And it showed, actually.
So I guess the question is, does that matter? On one hand, you could say, well, only one Senate Republican changed his mind because of that presentation. That was Bill Cassidy of Louisiana. You had only 6 Republicans say this is a constitutional procedure at this point. And even though all these other Republicans said it was a bad presentation, they didn't have the gumption to get crosswire with Trump. But could it be that, and I should say, not that I expect conviction here because I don't. I mean, you would need Mitch McConnell to really give the green light if you're actually going to get conviction. And even that might not be enough. But is it possible that this is going to be such a mismatch that some other Republicans might feel compelled to say, this is for history. This is, I was in the Senate when this happened. I know how horrible this was for democracy. I mean, you have certain Republicans like Rob Portman and now Richard Shelby who are not running again. They're not everybody has the next election on their mind. Could this be such a mismatch that the numbers of people who side with the Democrats ticks up after this is all said and done?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I just think it's unlikely. It seems like Republicans have just decided that they're not going to ever do anything to hold Trump accountable, and nothing's going to persuade them otherwise. And they're going to cling to, clearly, I mean, other than 6 of them, they are clinging to this notion, which I think is a dubious notion, but a notion that you can't, that Trump is not subject to impeachment, that it's unconstitutional. I think the Democrats did a good job of undermining that, citing. So first of all, Trump was president when the House impeached him.
Right.
So, so it's not like they're impeaching, and then it's referred to the Senate, and the Senate has a responsibility to conduct the trial. Second of all, they cited precedent where, the founders and there was like sort of British examples like the Hastings trial that the founders clearly knew about. There's precedent, not for presidents, but for other officials being impeached after they left office. And then citing conservative legal scholars. I think Democrats did a really good job, but how many people out there are following it that closely? how many people are there who are like open-minded, persuasive, and following the trial this closely, right? I mean, not that many. So, but look, anybody who's intellectually honest, who's watching this and really paying attention, is going to come away and be like, the Republicans are hacks, you know? So I think that there will be a price to pay, probably not politically as much as in the eyes of history. You know, I think that it's an open and shut case in my opinion.
I mean, it would probably require McConnell saying to the caucus, we need Trump out of here. We need him disqualified so he can't run again and continue to taint this party. And we all need to lock arms and suck up the short-term heat we're going to get for it, because that's a long-term necessity. And there's no obvious indication that he's prepared to make that case internally. But I would think it's hard to be in the middle. It's one thing to say, okay, let's all do this. Let's all jump off the cliff together. That's in some way easier than to be kind of in no man's land where it's only 7, 8, 9 Republicans where you're not going to convict him, but you might take heat yourself.
So the other thing is going to be, I'm going to be interested. I don't know to what degree Donald Trump has control over what's happening going forward. He could not have been happy with the first attorney. I think his name is Bruce Castor. Mm-hmm. Trump could not have been happy with that performance. You know, one of the benefits of Trump, being shameless and being willing to defend the indefensible is that it's at least somewhat coherent. But like Castor was trying to really finesse things and sort of suck up to the senators. And he was kind of twisting himself in knots making these arguments. And one of the arguments that he made was basically like he was saying, look, let's be honest. The reason we're doing this impeachment is because they want to get rid of Donald Trump in 2024. They don't want Donald Trump to be able to run again. They don't trust the American people. But clearly the American people spoke. Look, they voted against Trump last time. And the American people aren't stupid. And if they get tired of someone, they're going to vote him out, just like they did Trump. And I'm thinking, Donald Trump is home in Mar-a-Lago watching this. And he's just taken a pencil and he's just jammed it through a notebook, like when Richard Nixon basically put Ike in a corner over whether he'll be the running mate or not. Will Trump attempt to intervene? Can he? Will he try to intervene and change like the trajectory of their defense? And we'll, we may know today, later today, if there's a change in tone.
I mean, I have a hard time caring what Trump is thinking right now. He's just so out of sight, out of mind for me. I mean, my question is, how would this impact Trump's relationship to the Republican Party? Is it going to make him more committed to control the party? Is it going to make him interested in leaving the party and starting a third party? I mean, obviously, assuming we don't go beyond 5 or 6 guilty votes, the party is saying, don't leave us. Would he feel betrayed enough anyway? Here you have even the people voting his way are still complaining about the presentation. They're not all being Major Taylor Greene and saying this is Trump's party. They're still showing their squeamishness. Is that enough for Trump to say, screw this, I'm out of here. I'm going to take my people with me?
No, I don't think so. I think this just speaks to the Republican Party not being willing to turn the corner, not being willing to heal itself and to take any steps toward restoring itself. And I think it speaks to Donald Trump's going to be able to say he was acquitted again. Mm-hmm. Those are probably the two big takeaways. No. But look, I do think there's a story about competence here. This trial is being conducted in the same sort of haphazard way as Trump conducted his reelection and his presidency. And so I think that it is symbolic of some larger problems. They're, clinging to questionable theories about the law, about what is possible, and it's being conducted by people who are not the best in their field. They're not the top tier. So, and once again, Trump has created a lot of problems that he's handed someone else has to defend, Mm-hmm. So I think that, there's stuff to say about it, but at the end of the day, I think it's just more of the same for Republicans.
Now, I think Bill Cassidy's flip here, and I think Bill Cassidy in general is being underlooked or underlooked. Here's a guy who
you and I both need more caffeine today. I don't know what's going on with us.
So here's a guy that if you were to ask before the election, who is going to be the Republicans willing to work with Joe Biden, you probably would not put Cassidy high up on the list, although I think I might have put him on my broader list because he did try a little bit on healthcare under Trump, although he got, he went halfway and scurried back and got mocked by Jimmy Fallon for it. But he seemed to have a bit of a bipartisan, strain in there. But I don't think he was high up on a lot of people's lists. And he joined the Romney group in December. He's part of the Collins group of 10 now. He, with most Republican senators, voted to certify the results. And he's also said on Sunday, I don't think this became a headline anywhere, but he said on Meet the Press, he was asked by Chuck Todd about the $600 billion offer, that was, as far as they would go. And Cassidy said that was not the end point. And they're still willing to talk because Biden and the Democrats are showing so much body language about reconciliation that the notion Republicans are going to get back in the negotiation game is not being taken very seriously. But Cassidy's trying to keep that door open. And now you have him changing his vote based on the presentation here. Here's a guy who just got reelected, so he's not up for reelection until 2026. Even though he's in a deep,
which is good because
state.
The Louisiana Republican Party just condemned him. I don't know how powerful, I don't know how much it matters when these state parties censure or condemn politicians, but it is it's a sign.
Well, I think there are a lot of Trumpy people in these state party hierarchies right now, and I'm not arguing that Louisiana is going to side with Cassidy over Trump in all this, because obviously it's a very, very deep red state. But I do think we can sort of overemphasize the import of those sorts of things because they're not necessarily reflections of the electorate in their states. But the point here is, Cassidy obviously knows he's going against the grain of his state in doing this, and he clearly does not care. This is because it's not just one thing here, one thing there. We'd have a string of behavior over the last 3 months. That's a sign, in my opinion, that he's open for business, wants to talk, doesn't want to sit around for 6 years getting nothing done, wants to get something done. And so the question for Biden and the Democrats generally is he a sign that there are enough people like that in the Senate to make bipartisanship still worth pursuing? Or is he just, an anomaly and non-indicative of what's possible? To shift into the whole COVID relief bill talks, I told the corn pop story in the last show, and I just
regaling people with that.
And I did take your advice and wrote up as a column for the Washington Monthly, so that's up right now. I can't say whether I think it's clear that Biden is quote unquote using the chain, as he did with corn pop.
He doesn't want to use the chain,
but he's prepared to use the chain. So he didn't hit corn pop in the head with the chain, but he wielded it, and then had the outstretched hand, gave the apology, they stood down and then they became friends. So one thing I should clarify from last show. So I said that Esther was Corn Pop's birth name, and which is one, wrong, so I got to correct myself, but two, not totally my fault, because the first time I had read about that story, the reporter got it wrong. This has been a 2006 GQ profile. Now that's what I was reading from on the show last week. So I was misled, but I think now we know. But
you're accepting full responsibility for what happened.
Yes, because I had flipped through Biden's 2007 memoir where he says he was referring to Esther Williams, the actress / swimmer / aquatic water dancer, and so he was mocking Corn Pop when he was jumping on the diving board. Hey, Esther Williams, get off the board.
Someone called you out on this on Twitter, though.
Yes,
we were
yes.
The wisdom of the crowds. We were alerted, and we put our crack team of researchers to work on vetting this, and it turns out that the Twitter person was right.
Yes, so. Twitter is always right. I'm always wrong. So Biden here is doing the same thing. He's wielding the chain. He's signaling Republicans, I can do this without you. And since we talked, there was a Politico story about how the Biden team is prepared to hammer Republicans with this if they vote no, that they will be held to account to the voters.
I prefer to say he's going to chain them.
You could say that now. That they're prepared to politically punish Republicans for not helping people in a time of distress. That puts pressure on Republicans to vote yes and not no. I mean, and as I was saying, it's still the case as of in the past week. There's still no organized opposition to this. There's no Republican game plan to stop this or to make it politically beneficial to say you tried to stop it. Whereas those battle lines were drawn very clearly by this point in 2009 with the Obama stimulus. So I still think it is possible that 10 Republicans are going to say, we're with you on this, President Biden. Maybe they'll say, come towards us a little bit. Don't be completely rigid with your initial ask. And we still don't know if Joe Manchin or others in the Senate are going to, the House is putting together a bill that I think is some ways more aggressive than what Biden proposed. I don't know what the price tag is going to be, but they're adding in pieces of, anti-poverty pieces that I would think be expensive. We don't know if there'll be a moderate contingent in the Senate saying, okay, you don't have 50 for that. Even we're doing reconciliation, we're not going that far. They may not. I mean, it's just an unknown at this point. And it may be that Manchin and others say, look, President Biden, you need to meet with the group of 10 again. I'm not going to vote for this until we have more serious talks with this group of people and see if there's a way to get to 60. And there still is incentive for Joe Biden to see what's possible there, because if he can pass this with 60 and not have to use reconciliation, then you get to save reconciliation for something else that you might need, as well as a sort of on top of the fact that you can't do everything in the world through reconciliation. He's going to need 60 for other things. You might as well develop that working relationship and get off on the good foot to increase the chances that can happen on those other things. I mean, it doesn't totally cut you off if you do reconciliation now, but you might have to worry that if you are setting a partisan tone, that they may back off and say, hey, you're trying to screw us here, Joe Biden. You're doing this purposely without us to punish us in the midterms, and now we really don't want to help you. That's where I think Biden has to worry. Maybe I can't do immigration reform. Maybe I can't do voting rights. Maybe I can't do, there's some climate you could do through reconciliation, but not everything. He would be more limited if he can't find ways to get the 60. So I don't count out the possibility that might still happen, even though there's a lot of momentum for Democrats doing this big and doing this on their own.
You know who I think could push us into the end zone? Tom Brady. I have to ask you, because you're up in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
How's the vibe around you? Is it pro Tom Brady after he went to Tampa Bay, and Gronk is in Tampa Bay too? So are you, and I know you're not a Patriots fan or an NFL fan, but is there envy or jealousy, or are people cheering Tom Brady down, up there?
I can't really tell you. I mean, my social interactions are so minuscule right now. I mean, it would be hard for me to tell you even on a good day because I'm so unconnected with Patriot World. But I don't even get glimpses of it now because I'm not talking to anybody. I would think people are still Brady fans and want to be able to say that Tom Brady was the greatest of all time, and not have Deflategate, hang over him. I agree with you, Simone. I agree with you.
She thinks he's a cheater, right?
They know the truth in this household. But
all he does is win, Bill.
Well, I mean,
it can't just be because of spying or inflated footballs.
Well, look, it's like Barry Bonds was a bad hitter until he took steroids. He was a very good hitter, but he also wanted that extra edge, obviously.
Right, but the difference is that taking steroids would make you for multiple seasons as long as you're taking them. But there's no way that Belichick was still spying after Spygate, or that in Tampa Bay that they're. I mean,
you don't know what you don't know, Matt.
You're a Brady truther, aren't you? This is a conspiracy theory.
I think cheating in sports is pretty widespread. I mean, the Houston Astros in the World Series. So, I mean, it's possible that both sides cheated. I mean, the cheating in sports goes back a long, long way.
Some would even say that it's a storied, colorful history.
Right. So, I mean, he could be, extremely competent in all sorts of other areas and still be a cheater. Like, those things are not necessarily mutually exclusive. But the point is, obviously, he gets to more easily say he's the greatest of all time. As I commented on Twitter, he has this diet supplement workout business, which is
I'm very close to buying his cookbook.
Right, but it's all very dubious stuff, and all the aging researchers are like, what he's selling is bunk. Gronk sells CBD oils and claims that
I 100% believe anything Tom Brady says about aging, and I'm about to encourage my wife to make us some avocado ice cream.
See,
which I hear is very good for you.
I mean, avocados are good for you, but I would not buy Tom Brady's dietary supplements. But he's not going to make a killing on this stuff because people are going to not believe what the scientists have to say, and they're just going to go with what the advertising says.
I don't know how you could go wrong with Tom Brady.
See,
I just don't.
The facts just bounce off the frame. There's nothing you can say.
He's even if you look at my track record week in and week out of writing great columns, he's still here. He's still a notch above me in his profession. So, of course, you're going to take the guy's advice.
Okay, so let me ask you this, Matt. If we can get a little sports nerdy for a second, I'll pull out what minimal sports knowledge I know. So Tom Brady has the most Super Bowl rings of any quarterback.
7. He's been in 10, won 7.
But he's lost 3.
Yeah.
Joe Montana, 4-0. Terry Bradshaw, 4-0. Is it better to have never lost a Super Bowl than to have won more but still lost some?
That's a good question because I'll tell you where it shows is someone like Jim Kelly, who went to 3 and lost all 3.
It wasn't 4?
Might have been. And even John Elway ended up winning 1 at the end. Mm-hmm. But he was, I think he was 0-3 at some point. So I think losing, the thing is, to make it to a Super Bowl, just to make it to a Super Bowl, you're great. Mm-hmm. But I think you could argue better to never make it than to lose in terms of your reputation. Mm-hmm. Having said that, I think it's indisputable that Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time. And I don't think as good as Montana and Bradshaw were, I don't think they're in the same conversation anymore.
Let me totally.
I know people come here for our sports commentary, but let's just, I don't know much, but I know that.
So Kelly took Buffalo to 4 consecutive Super Bowl appearances.
Such a good guy too. I don't know if you saw. I think it was last year. There was a tribute to him when Buffalo. I'm trying to remember. Was it 2 years ago? Anyway, he said he had a tough life, and including 4 losses. Right?
Yeah.
Redskins beat him. Giants beat him. Cowboys beat him. I don't know who else beat him. And one time, I think, was it the first game they lost to the Giants? That was when...
No, Scott Norwood.
That
I remember.
The goalpost, right?
Yep.
It bounces out. So, that's total luck at that point.
So another piece that I wrote for the Washington Monthly this week is on voting rights. I mentioned voting rights before, something where Democrats almost surely need 60 on, because they can't do that through reconciliation. It doesn't have enough direct budgetary impact. But if you read the average, progressive analysis column, hot take on voting rights, it is that Democrats need to do this. It's not just a moral imperative for racial justice. It's a political imperative because the electoral system is skewed to Republicans. There's rampant voter suppression tactics being used. The Republicans are going to double down on that now. And if Democrats don't do this, they can't win elections that they deserve to win. And since you can't get Republicans to vote for something like that, you have to abolish the filibuster in order to pass this bill. It's a travesty if that does not occur. And so I did a pretty big deep dive into this. I talked to a number of Republicans. I talked to academics. I went through a lot of the data. And no matter Democrats believe this to be true, Republicans believe this to be true. Republicans think if Democrats pass all these things, it's bad for them. And you're seeing at the state legislative level a renewed push for voter ID laws. Georgia has some proposals to have double photo ID for voting now, after getting embarrassed in the president race and the Senate races. But the data does not support either of these narratives. It's not at all the case that if you expand voting rights, you scoop up a ton of Democratic votes. And it's not the case that voter ID laws suppress Democratic votes and help Republicans win elections. And both sides are so suspicious of each other and mistrustful of each other that, all it takes is Republicans pushing a voter ID law for Democrats to conclude, hey, they must be up to something. They know what this is going to do, and so I have to stop it. And Republicans have to say, hey, these Democrats say if we do mail voting and early voting and same-day registration, it's going to help them. We got to stop it. When you go through the numbers, it just isn't there. So just to walk folks through as best I can without getting too detailed. There's a Knight Foundation study that surveyed non-voters and extremely rare voters. This is not a wildly left-leaning pool of people. There is a very slight Democratic plurality of 33% versus 30% Republican, and a good chunk third-party leaning. The group leaned slightly left on economics, but socially conservative right, slightly on social issues. You're going to look at just what happened in the past few elections. So we had this huge wave of turnout in 2020. Yes, Joe Biden won. Joe Biden did better than Hillary Clinton. Yes, Democrats took back the Senate. But look at the House vote. we had, I think it was more than 30 million people vote in the House races from 2018 to 2020, and Republicans increased their share of the House popular vote by nearly 3 percentage points, and they flipped 13. I think it's 14 with New York 22 just getting called. And Republicans did very well at the state legislative level. They gained seats state legislatively in the same election. So it's not like it's all in one direction. This is a pretty mixed pool of people, this non-voter, rare voter pool. So anything involving mail voting, Republicans did very, very well in mail voting previous to 2020. So it wasn't until Trump said stop doing it, which it became a problem. But Florida, in-person early voting, Republicans did very well in. That helped them win the state. And you can get into the felon issue. Now, the felon voting pool is a whole lot smaller than just the wide pool of non-voters generally. In the Democratic bill, H.R. 1, it would say if you are an unincarcerated felon or ex-felon, so that means you've completed your sentence, or you're on parole, or you're on probation, you could vote, period. And there are about 31 states where that's not the case now. And the people affected by that is about 3.9 million people. Heavily concentrated in Florida. Florida is about 1 million of those. And then you got a handful of southern states that take up a good deal of the rest. And this is a pool that is disproportionately African American. And so Democrats are highly motivated to deliver for a key constituency of theirs. But it's not the same as it being majority African American. And it's not a given that the Democrats would net votes out of this pool of people.
Because the population of African Americans in America is small. What percentage of Americans are African Americans?
I think I forgive me for not having this on the top of my head. I think it's about 13%.
So even though it may be disproportionately African American, it would still be a smaller percent of the overall.
Well, there's research to show that a felon's voting inclination is not determined by felony status, is determined by the same demographic factors as every other voter. So you have about 2 million people in this 3.9 million pool who are white, and about 90% of prisoners generally are men, and about 90% of prisoners have not had any college education at all. So white male non-college, hello, Republican voter, Trump voter.
I think I would argue more likely to vote Republican in a Trump world than in a Mitt Romney world, probably.
Probably, but Republicans had the white male non-college vote before Trump. It was accelerated with Trump,
but now we got the prisoner vote too, Bill.
You could, and in Florida specifically, the African American population in this felon, ex-felon, non-incarcerated pool is about 28%, and there's an estimate in the most recent data of Latinos being 8%. So that is still roughly 2/3. Of it being white, and again, most of that being male non-college. So now in Florida, particularly in Florida, obviously, is sort of the big kahuna here. It's not only the highest concentration of felons without their voting rights, it's also a swing state. Now, Florida did pass by referendum Amendment 4, which gave these felons, by and large, their rights back. But then, and at the time of the passage of the amendment, it was estimated as a pool of 1.4 million people. Now, the Republican legislature passed a law implementing what the referendum and saying completing your sentence includes paying off your fines and your penalties. That cut down the pool of newly eligible people by roughly half, a little bit more than half. So you had about 625,000 people now newly eligible instead of 1.4. In 2020, we know that at least 88,000 people were newly registered and about 52,000 voted. And this tracks, because there are some Florida ex-felons that got their rights back by executive order prior to this amendment. So there was a study done of those who got their rights back for the 2016 election and what their turnout level was, and it was very low. And it looks like the 2020 turnout level is also very low. So one, it skews white. Two, it skews male non-college. Three, it's not nearly as many people as the top line number make you think. And when you get outside of Florida, these numbers get smaller and smaller. So this is not a group of people that are going to be determinative for a lot of elections and still might be a net plus for Republicans.
See, that's the point I want to make is even if you take out the racial aspect of this, I think Republicans, back when Republicans were like a law and order party, feared that felons are going to vote in their own self-interest. They're going to vote for sort of soft on crime, bleeding heart liberals and against tough on crime, law and order Republicans. But that assumes that they're like unionized, like I'm a professional criminal, like I'm a proper villain. And that's probably not how the average, ex-felon views himself. So,
and mind you, Trump did better than 2016 with African-American men, certainly better with African-American men than African-American women. And some indications they did better with non-college than college. So you probably have what of the African-American pool in this ex-felon population, probably majority non-college. So it's not like you can take all those votes and ascribe them all to Democrats. Trump, Republicans can get some of that vote.
You know what I would love to see? You remember that Simpsons episode where like Sideshow Bob runs for mayor of Springfield, and you have the meeting with like the Republican meeting, and it's like Mr. Burns. I think Krusty's there. You've got like basically Rush Limbaugh is there. And it's basically like this evil conclave. I would love like a meeting where you assemble like Seb Gorka and Steve Bannon and, just think of the motley crew. And it's like Steve Bannon or someone gets up and is like, gentlemen, I found our key to winning the next election. The criminal, the criminal element. These are our base voters. This is going to be our strategy.
I don't think it's enough people to really win an election, but it's not a pool that Republicans should be afraid of. Now, that brings you to voter ID laws, which Republicans seem very wedded to. But Republicans have been pushing voter ID laws for almost 10 years now. And it hasn't saved that. It didn't stop Barack Obama. It didn't keep the House in 2018. It didn't keep the Senate or the White House in 2020. Now, not every voter ID law is a strict one. But Biden flipped 3 states with strict voter ID laws.
Yeah. Look, I've been consistent on this. I am for it on principle. I don't care who it helps. I think you should have to show some form of ID when you vote. Like you can't cash a check without an ID. You can't buy a 6-pack without an ID. I think if you're voting, it shouldn't be onerous. But it should just be some form of identification. Doesn't seem like an outlandish idea.
Well,
that makes me.
Yeah, I was talking to I talked to some Republicans for this piece, and at least one of them said to me, making your point. But if the government's going to insist upon that, you have to make it easy for voters to get that ID. You have to pay for. Make it free for people who don't currently have it. If it's not a driver's license, some other kind of photo ID. I'm
feeling a very David Letterman quality here, where you're walking through the NBC, the bowels of the NBC studios.
Right. Well, I'm just gonna hang here for a little bit. So, but Republicans should understand. I mean, it's not just me giving these anecdotal examples of it not working. There is academic research to show that voter ID laws have had no discernible impact on turnout, in general or with any subgroup, because the evidence shows that people adapt to the law, and Democrats in particular, they get so mad about it.
Yeah,
it has a galvanizing effect. It backfires, and all the voting rights groups, go the extra mile and make sure everybody understands the new law and gets them the idea that they need and gets them out to vote. So it just doesn't do what Republicans want it to do.
Yeah, which I think is an argument for it.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you can, once you start talking about how electorally neutral these things are, you can then argue them either way. Well,
I think it buttresses my case.
Yeah.
Which is like, we should do this because it's right. It makes perfect sense. And also, it's not going to hurt the people you think it's going to hurt.
So my ultimate point is that if both Democrats or Republicans understood the data, understood that at least of the things that I mentioned, don't put a thumb on the scale for either party, it's a whole lot easier to have a negotiation about where the common ground is. Maybe you do mail voting, early voting, senior registration, and voter ID law. Say it's a balanced bill. I mean, I'm not saying that's the only way you could do it, but it's a way you could do it. It just becomes a whole lot easier to have the conversation. And if you're a Democrat thinking, look, this is a moral imperative. When I wrote this, a lot of people said to me, I don't care. This is a fundamental right. It shouldn't be denied to anybody. And all the racial, racist elements in our past need to be expunged, particularly when you could deal with the felon question, because it does disproportionately affect African Americans. I don't care who it helps. Once you're in that space, it's a lot easier to say, I will work with Republicans to get this done because I don't care who it helps or hurts.
Yeah.
And it makes a whole lot less sense to me to say, let's convince Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema to abolish the filibuster so we can pass this on a party line vote, when they've said explicitly that they're never, ever, ever going to do that. As hard as it might be to get to 60 here, I think it's a lot easier if you can get Republicans to accept this data and then just have a good faith negotiation about where to go from there, because no one feels like they're trying to backstab the other.
Once again, Bill, bringing light with your columns, but not attacking, not in the grime, but you are enlightening people with your columns.
That's what we try to do here at the DMZ, and now
we do, kind of like my hero Tom Brady, week in, week out. They say we're getting too old. No, we're just getting started. We're not even in our prime yet.
So we should wrap up. That's at the Washington Monthly. Check that out at the Washington Monthly. I also want to plug, I had a star turn on the great Election Profit Makers podcast, which, if you don't know, it's David Reese, Starlee Klein, and John Kimball. And they're kind of, they talk about, betting on political markets, but also, just have fun political conversations. So I got put on the hot seat for that. We had a good time.
Check that out. Let me know what you think about this backdrop, everybody, if you're watching, not listening. Do I need more books? Should I have a fern? These are the things that really matter. I want to hear from you. And make sure to follow us on Twitter, at DMZ Show on Twitter. And please, you should maybe support the long form work that we do. And someone actually asked me to do this, so I'm going to say where you can do that. You could support either Bill or me, and it's patreon.com/Bill Scher or patreon.com/Matt Lewis. And that gets you into our weekly DM Zooms. Now, here's something that you should know about the DM Zooms. This is not you listening as a spectator while Bill and Matt talk more. The world doesn't need more of that. This is a conversation. Like sometimes Bill and I will talk for 5 or 10 minutes, and then we spend 50 minutes just everyone weighing in. Once in a while, we have a special guest, but mostly it's just a dialogue. So we'd love to have you join us there. And did I forget anything, Bill?
Nope. If you do it before Friday, you can get on Friday's episode of DM Zoom. We'd love to see you there, and I'll see you there on Friday, and I'll see you back here next week.
All right. Thanks, Bill. See you guys.